Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining this episode of Cults and Overcoming. So, I probably should have done this episode first as a first episode, but is what it is. This will be the final episode of this first season. And basically, we will be talking about what a cult is, how it relates to what we have been through, and then if we have time, discussing a couple other cults as well. So I have a couple co-hosts today, which I'm excited about. We have Troy and Scotty, who I have interviewed both of them. They have both been on. So just going to go and welcome you guys. Hey, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, of course. Thank you very much for having us.
Hello there.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I know it was really last minute. So thank you so much.
Of course.
So yeah, I thought we would just kind of discuss, which I should have, like I said, Troy, this should have been a first one, but oh well. Kind of just discuss more in depth what we kind of maybe thought a cult was growing up, because obviously we didn't know we were in one at the time. And just kind of go from there and the different aspects of it and really what we grew up in, because there were so many different dynamics to it. I mean, you have the rehab part, you have the church part, and then other things as well, just kind of giving a little more explanation to that. So yeah, we'll just get started. I'm just going to go ahead and read Webster's definition of a cult. Yeah, so basically here it just says it's a small religious group that is not part of a larger and more accepted religion, and that has beliefs regarded by many people as extreme or dangerous. A situation in which people admire and care about something or someone very much or too much. Great devotion to a person, idea, object, movement, or work. And a usually small group of people characterized by such devotion. I kind of feel like those last two are really connected with us, because we kind of had a smaller group of people that were kind of dedicated to like one person,
right?
Being DK, although we also answered to some elders and whatnot, but it usually was everything went through the top, which was one main person. Although in its heyday, there was like, it got to like 300-400, you think?
Probably I think the highest the students were ever was around 250.
So altogether it was probably
church was 3,000.
Oh wait, no.
Close to it.
No, it was not.
Okay.
It was a couple hundred. We were in a small town in Hungerford, Texas. Literally the population in Hungerford.
No, when it was off of Westheimer, it was close to 3,000 total people.
You're talking about when we put the church in Houston.
Right. So there's a difference between the drug prevention team and the church. And if you're looking at just the drug prevention or drug rehab, the students was probably the most, is about 250 at its heyday. But that was also the heyday of the church, which was off of not Westheimer, but off of, what was the name of that street?
Yeah, Rogerdale.
Rogerdale, right.
Yes.
But it was off of Rogerdale. We nearly filled the entire auditorium in that place, and it was close, maybe not 3,000, but at least 1,000 to 2,000. And yeah, it was crazy.
But yeah, we were, pretty much all dedicated to serving into this one idea and to this one person. So yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and ask, with y'all, Scotty, like, what did you think of, besides what we grew up in, like, what did you consider a cult, or what did it mean to you?
So my first sort of exposure to that sort of thing was actually in just watching movies and TV shows, it being referenced and explained and in the context of the plot or show. I was telling Troy last night, there's this episode of Boy Meets World where his best friend Sean gets involved with this youth organization that ends up being a cult, and they call their complex the Center. And so by the time my family started coming to Hungerford and it was y'all referring to it as the Center, I immediately was like, but that and like just other movies and shows like The Simpsons, there's always a bunch of cult type jokes.
The-
So
The Village.
yeah, oh yeah, Shyamalan, love that movie.
Yeah. Well, first, I totally forgot. Why don't, since this is going to be the final episode of this first season, we'll just go ahead and cheers. A
Cheers,
Cheers.
salute.
cheers, mate.
Yep.
So y'all are having beer. I'm having a glass of wine. This tastes really
Yep.
good.
We are at Battle Hops Brewery in Katy, Texas, off of alternate 90. So great
Okay,
place.
cool. Yeah, so I guess to me, like growing up, whenever I thought a cult, I thought more of like, I guess the extreme with like Waco and David Koresh and or like
Branch Davidians.
Huh?
The Branch Davidians. That's the name
Yeah.
of
Like
David.
Heaven's Gate or Jonestown, like
Heaven's Gate or-
typical, well-known, eccentric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
cults.
Jonestown, how they all committed suicide because of, that one person. That's kind of the scenario I thought of a cult is just so extreme and something tragic happens at the end. But, it started somewhere. Like it started on some level. It probably at the beginning wasn't as insane. But I think that, I don't know, you guys can come in on this, but I think some of the parts of how dealing with the center, what we call it the center, aka Restoration City. Yeah. Like I've said before, we didn't realize that we were in a cult, but looking back now,
Right.
it's like there were just so many red flags. You had the power dynamic, you had the giving of a lot of your funds or most of your funds.
Right.
A lot of kids were sexually assaulted. It's just one thing after the next, and just one idea of like, oh, like one major thing that I've noticed with other cults as well is that you have this idea that like you are the one that is helping the rest of the world and then it's
Yeah.
going to save the rest of the world, and nobody else is on that level.
Right. It's kind of we're the one remnant or the one respite from the rest of the world. This is the place where heaven meets earth. This is Eden. This is Zion, as something that we hear a lot we heard a lot in the praise and worship at that place, is that this is the place of holiness, and everywhere else is corrupt in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so arrogant.
Yeah.
We were
Remember
the
they
center of
would
the
be like,
universe.
huh?
Oh no, just we were the center of the universe.
Oh yeah. Remember they would be like, we are God's chosen people. God is going to use us. We would pray for the
Yep.
finances to come in, but we were the ones giving the finances. And so we were just God's chosen people. Nobody else knew what they were doing. No other church knew,
Mhm.
But it's the same with like, if I've watched so much on like Scientology and other cults, it's the same kind of thing. They're in their world of, we're going to help people. We're the only one that can help people. And I'm just like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it's as if they're always looking to create paradise, but what they end up doing, or utopia, but they end up always creating a dystopia because there's some twist in their understanding, twist in their belief system, and they end up just abusing people trying to reach that utopia. It just creates a dystopia. So
Yeah.
I think that definition, the last two parts that you mentioned, the great devotion to a person, idea, object, movement, or work. I mean, I think that Restoration City and all of its previous names, David Kirschke did a good job of balancing between all of those, ultimately in his personhood, but the idea of helping people that have life controlling issues, and that is an idealistic venture that everyone can get behind. The movement of, hey, we want to spread this, make it more and more broad. The attempt to always go to Houston, and that constant going, hey, let's move. We need to move. That's where we're supposed to be. That's the vision that we have. We need to get to Houston, and being rebuffed at every time. And we're just going, oh, Satan attacked us. Let's regroup and let's go back. It's that so many different things that exactly like that definition talks about, is that great devotion for those few different things, and people were willing to do whatever.
Yeah.
So,
And that's so funny. If something bad did happen, it was because Satan attacked us.
Mhm.
And he prayed against the demonic forces
warfare.
that are at war with us. Troy, would you kind of like just to kind of explain a little more in depth of what actually is Restoration City and like the different parts that, you have the two main parts that we have just kind of discussed a little bit, just so people get a more broad
okay.
spectrum, and then Scotty can just maybe a little bit talk about like the drug prevention side of
Okay.
it.
So, with the original idea was out of David Wilkerson's Teen Challenge. That's where it originally started, which was a troubled teen industry style discipleship program where they would take teens off the street that were in alcohol and drugs, give them a Christian style education and very strict structure, and attempt to give them the strength to go back out into society, face it, and not succumb to the temptations. That's how it originally started. It just got twisted into, no, we actually don't want you to go back out into society. We want you to stay here. So it's very close to the Teen Challenge type idea. That was one aspect of the entire group. You had the church side of it, where you have David Kirschke and his eldership attempting to build a church, a mega church, if it were. And so you had that side of the ministry where you have constant reiterations of the ideologies of the pastor and his cronies, and everybody needs to get behind this vision. And if you're not behind this vision, you get humiliated publicly, kind of like what you've talked about in a couple different previous episodes, where we had the Song of the Lord, where there's a microphone down on the floor. Everybody's encouraged to come to the front. If you're not up front, then you're not entering in the thing that's on the door to the church. If you don't enter in, or what?
Do not enter in unless you are going to enter in.
Right. And so if
Just
you didn't
explain
get
real
up
quick.
there,
Sorry,
yeah.
just explain real quick. The Song of the Lord was during praise and worship part of church service.
Yeah, I was, yes, it was part of praise and worship, where the intention was all of us need to be making a joyful noise. We all need to do, and they had Hebrew words on the walls. We all need to be singing, whether or not you could sing or not. And so they had a microphone on the floor, and because we had, at the time that we were there, had some pretty good musicians, they could riff for a while, and you were just supposed to add your voice to it. And if you didn't do it for a few months, they would start questioning whether or not you actually had a relationship with God or the Holy Spirit. Even if it was that you recognized, I don't have a voice for this, they would shame you into doing it. So there's that. And then you had the way that they did communion, which it's not a bad thing to have the close knit. Let me share what I think I've done wrong. I don't necessarily think that that's wrong when I'm trying to address something and trying to build a relationship that has a wall in it. But what they did is they twisted that into a public shaming event where people had to be up there all by themselves and expose themselves to the ridicule and the stares of the rest of the church. So there was just constant reiteration of control. Then on the third part of that whole ministry was the drug prevention team, which was started a lot earlier than we traveled with them on Straightway, with Jonathan Gill and Brandon Oliver and Karen Gill and a bunch of other people, that they would go into prisons and schools and try to give a positive message of abstinence from drugs and alcohol, so that if they can reach them there before they're doing it, maybe they won't need the program that we offer. So those are the three sides. And if you're looking at it from the outside, it's like, man, those are all good visions to have. A church, a drug rehabilitation center, and a drug prevention team. But it was what do we call it? The soft white underbelly of it that was all corrupt and broken, and the control that went with it. So that's an overview of the ministry and a little bit of its history.
I believe also the prison ministry There was a
Yeah.
bunch of people.
Yeah, that kind of split before you got there, but when we were there, Straightway was the prison ministry.
Oh,
When we
okay.
first got there, it was when the teenagers got involved that they couldn't send the teenagers into the
Gotcha,
prisons.
gotcha.
So the older team that was on Straightway specifically started doing prison ministry, and Straightway started doing just schools.
Okay.
So there was like this first layer that were 4 or 5 different ministries. You had the prison ministry where they would go into the prisons and do like worship or like prayer time, or with that they also had, I don't know if y'all remember this is before Scotty's time, where it was like for the nursing homes and stuff for like older
yeah.
people. I did that. So there were 4 or 5 like different ministries going outside of this place. So from the outside looking in, it does look all good. You're like, man, there's a lot of good going on here. And when you first get involved and start doing it and you're in it, it's like, man, this is awesome. I really feel like I'm helping people. And all of that. But yeah, just like you said, the underneath of it all ends up being something else. But real
And
quick,
even some of, I mean, talking about those things, I think many of those were sincere. I think many of those were intended to be good. And that's not what we're critiquing about what it is that makes that place a cult. Those were all good outgrowths of people's, like the lady that was in charge of the nursing homes. I mean, her intention was not to spread a cultish perspective. It was just to serve the elderly. That was a really good ministry. Same thing with Straightway. And when you start looking at it, it's like the intentions were all really good. But I mean, kind of like that old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's what you're doing behind the scenes that's the problem.
Yeah. Scotty, do you kind of want to go a little more depth into, I know you explained a little on your interview of like what the Straightway drug prevention part was, because I think they ended up being some of the main source of a lot of the income that ended up coming into the whole part of it. So if you just want to kind of explain.
Whenever they would have the Christmas banquet and have the pie graph of all the income sources, and you looked and it clearly said that the Straightway Outreach Drug Prevention Team was the main source of income. So they would have 2 groups go across Texas and the rest of the country sometimes, and just do these motivational assemblies and leadership programs and trainings to elementary, middle school, and high school age. I even sometimes colleges, we just do shows at colleges just because they were booking shows. And at churches also, a bunch of churches and youth groups. And so we'd just be gone for weeks at a time. And, y'all would go to Europe during the summer and do shows. And, like you said, when you join this thing, it really does feel like you're reaching young people. Like I felt like I was reaching my peers and doing a better part for my peers. And you felt that energy that, you just wanted to keep being a part of. And then it just kind of, you slowly see what's really going on as, time goes on.
You're accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would even, one of the main things that we did, we call it traveling on the road, which is we would be gone. God, some of us would be gone for a month at a time doing the Straightway drug prevention part of it, right? So for one thing, our school greatly suffered because we homeschooled. And so during that time, we barely did any schoolwork. And then we would come back home and we would try to catch up, but we couldn't even barely do that because we had to serve and babysit within the community. That's a whole nother thing. But it's just, I felt like we were the main ones doing this, and we barely saw any money from it. We started getting per diem. That was a big deal. Man. That was like,
and that was only with a grant, right?
Yeah, that was only when we got this grant. Do you remember how much it was for?
I know it was at least a couple $100,000.
It was a few hundred. Yeah. So it was when George Bush was the governor of Texas, and we got it through that at that time through the government. And we started getting per diem. And I think at that time we started getting paid like $50 or $100 a week, which is nothing, you know, whenever you are dedicating, most of your life is being dedicated to this.
Mhm.
We,
And sacrificing your education.
yeah. But you know, at the time, like one thing I was gonna say, like one of the main things that we would do after, so every assembly, we called it assembly, was like it would be like an hour-long program. And so there would be within it, there would be singing, dancing, this is gonna sound cheesy, but rap, almost like the only way I can portray that it would look like to an audience member, and we were nowhere near this, so please bear with me. Was like if you're watching like in sync or something, it's just like it's a group of people dancing, and then there's a rapper and like two singers.
It was like watching an episode of America's Got Talent, because there was motivational speaking, there was comedy, there was
Yeah.
drama, there was dancing, there was singing, and you have this. It's a conglomeration of things to entertain people, but it was the intention was, in this entertainment, there's going to be a message that hopefully they get. You
Yeah.
know, the dramatic stories of our pasts,
Mhm.
the things that we went through to be the sober people that we were
Mhm.
in front of these students, trying to say, hey, don't be like our parents, or don't be like other people that we know. Be sober.
Yeah.
That was the intention behind it.
So one of the main things that we did is after every assembly, we would pass out our cards to
Yes.
every
Remember
kid that was leaving. And
I like that.
at the
You
end of
got
the
to be like close with like,
yeah.
man, I don't know. thought it was cool.
So at the end of every show,
Forgot about
they
that.
would tell them, yeah, at the end of every show, they would tell them, hey, we're going to give our card out. And back then you wrote letters.
Yeah.
You didn't have, you know,
Yes.
you now it's just like, oh, I better look online. I better email someone. Back then it was like writing letters. So, okay.
Handwritten letters. Yes.
We said, if you write us, we will promise to write you back. Blah, blah, blah. We'll help with whatever, you know, hard circumstances you're going through. So then we would get these hundreds and hundreds of letters. Some of it was just kids just wanted a friend to talk to, but then other stories where some of these kids were like having traumatic events that would happen to them. So we would write them back, and you know, it was just like a correspondence that you would go back and forth. So I guess my point being is like there were some parts that I felt like we actually did help people, and there was like something there that was genuine with like, I mean, I think that all of us here have like good hearts and good intentions, and I think at one point we really did help people.
Yes.
You know, there were people that were moved and helped. It's just
Yes.
there was a lot of other shit going down.
Mhm.
The good that was done was usually external and not short-lived or temporary, but it wasn't the people that were heavily involved in the ministry that got the good from what we were doing. You know, people would write letters, and I remember, you know, having to respond as a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old to people that were contemplating suicide, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
witnesses of horrific abuse, or victims of horrific abuse, and we're having to practically do counseling with them through a letter at 14 years old. So yeah, I think a lot of good was done, and our intentions were great. And you know, describing it, it's like, man, yeah, we did a lot of good. But that's not the focus. It's what happened when you got back. What happened in the hotels, having the light meetings, having the I mean, when we get into later stuff, having the accusatory meetings where like you need to confess and you need to, that's the type of stuff that where the abuse came out, or the twistedness came out, or the cultish mindset came out, is that, yeah, we were willing to help others, but it was like something that your sister said in hers was there was like a culture of meanness on Straightway specifically. It was cruel, the type of stuff, that the way that we interacted with each other. And the response was, if you were like, you know, stop, like that's wrong. What, are you easily offended?
Yeah.
You know, you're so weak that you can't handle this. You know, I'm just joking. And it's like, yeah, but nobody jokes about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Scotty, did that stuff happen with you when you were traveling on there?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm almost hesitant to call it hazing.
Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close to hazing. A lot of just picking fun and, just like picking on the young guy. And, I get it. It's like a rite of passage thing to some extent. But yeah, there was a lot of like, what are you doing? Please stop. Like, that's weird. And then, oh, what are you offended? We're just kidding. Why are you having an attitude? A lot of that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
just growing up, even if you go to public school, you have to face those sorts of things. So I never really took it too hard.
Yeah. But it wasn't from the officials and the
No, yeah.
there's a difference when it's
Yeah.
the students that are picking on you versus the people that are in charge doing it. And that culture of meanness was not just kids are going to be mean. But when the leadership is doing it, that was pretty cruel. For me being on Straightway, I was maybe a year and a half. They made me fast for 3 days. And I didn't really know that you're supposed to drink a lot of water. So I've have horrible migraines for 3 days straight. I get done with the 3 days and the response from the leadership was, oh, that was just a joke. Even though they knew I wasn't eating, even though they knew I'm sitting in the van. Well, yeah.
Why did
And they were just like, oh, it's just a joke. Everybody's had to do that. That's the rite of passage. That's how you get, inculcated into the team Straightway. So, a 14. Go
That
ahead.
was the reason for you having to fast? Was they just said it was a rite of passage?
No,
Or did they give you?
initially they said, no, to be on our team, you really need to be connected with God. You need to go on a fast. You need to fast for 3 days, at minimum. That's what you need to do. You need to fast for 3 days. Because and they forced it on me. Well, forced me to do it. Then I willingly was like, okay, if that's what it takes, I'll fast for 3 days. I have horrible migraines. Don't know that I'm supposed to be drinking a whole lot more water to kind of flush the toxins that come out when you fast like that. And at the end of 3 days, when I'm just like beat and having a hard time moving the heavy equipment, because I was the sound guy, which meant I had my job was the speakers and the soundboard, which are the 3 pieces of heaviest equipment. I'm like beat and I'm not being able to keep up with it. And then at the end of 3 days, it was, oh no, we were just joking. That's just a rite of passage. We make everybody do that. And I'm like, everybody I've talked to, they're like, they never make anybody do that. So that's the type of coolness. Yeah.
You're the first story that I've heard about that. I don't remember anybody else doing that. That's crazy. That is insane. Yeah. I mean, there was a period, the first, I did that for 10 years of my life, from like 13, 14 to about 23. I traveled and I literally thought that was just going to be the rest of my life. Like I was just going to have to deal,
Wow.
But the first few years I was, it was like in and out of depression, I guess, but I got made fun of a lot. And I just remember working my butt off so much. And then like I was just made fun of, and I would sit. So sometimes we would be performing like on stages and stuff, like in high schools or like college, and like these stages, and then we would be like in the background, in the back of the stage, like sitting there waiting while other people were on stage. And I just remember I would be sitting there sometimes just so depressed and almost start crying. I'm like, like the thoughts would go through my head, if I killed myself right now, shit. Like those thoughts like would go through my head, because like just the way that like I would get treated, or like it just seemed like they didn't care. I don't know. It was just another level.
So you're like, you're sacrificing to minister to kids. They're being mean to you. You're struggling, but there's no avenue for you to actually express yourself. It seems like a nightmare,
Yeah, I mean, I went back most time. There were several times I would stay in the van or something and just like cry my eyes out, or like we would get to the hotel, because like there would be all of us girls would be staying in the same room, so there would be 3 or 4 girls in the same room. So I would go in the van and just cry my eyes out, and like I don't know what to do. Like I want to escape, but I didn't know how to. Like it was just, sometimes it was a nightmare, but then like I said, sometimes it was good because you felt like you were helping people. I don't know if it's a weird dynamic.
Like you justified the pain you were enduring because of the good that you that we thought we were doing. Not to say we weren't doing any good doing that, but like that's what we justified. Keep going, like just endure their ridicule. What we're doing as a team is more important than whether or not I endure, whether or not people care for me, whether or not I'm important, whether or not anyone cares. And it's sad that they were seemingly so attentive to the needs in these students, strangers, but so completely ignoring the struggles of the students that were sacrificing for that system.
Mhm.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That sounds horrible.
I will say it's definitely made me very empathetic towards other people, and giving a lot of grace to others and everything. So, but yeah, it's just, I mean, I feel like we've all endured in one way or another. But Scotty, I wanted to ask you, because I feel like when you guys met us, I know that your dad and stuff was in communication with David before you guys came. Didn't we come and perform at y'all's church or something?
Yeah, in the valley. It was like year 2000. Y'all did like a training, so like a day session, and y'all like spent the day with like the church and the youth group. And I just remember y'all could have been like Britney Spears's like backup crew or NSYNC's like doubles or something. Like y'all were just like pop stars to us, and with the like the highlights and the frosted tips and the puka shell necklaces, like it just was like, I want to be that. That's what I want to be. I want to do that when I get their age. Like I want to. So that's how we first sort of learned of y'all. And then like I remember seeing the turnaround skit or drama being taught.
Turn around.
Total eclipse of the heart.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we thought that was the name of the song for years, and it took me years to
realize that it wasn't.
Is it
Yeah.
not? I always thought that was the name of it.
No, that's totally eclipse of the heart.
Oh, yeah. I like, because it was known, the drama was known as Turn Around. And I don't know if y'all know this or not.
Yes.
I thought that we were the ones that came up
Yeah.
with Turn Around.
No, it
There are
predates
so many
Straightway.
churches that do that skit. That is
Yeah.
so funny. I've seen on YouTube. I don't know if y'all ever looked this up. Look on the YouTube, Turn Around, like drama Turn Around. It is hilarious. I cringe. I can barely watch it. It's like,
Oh wow.
It's
Do you
embarrassing.
cringe because they do it so poorly?
oh,
'Cause I know
so
Brandon was-
poorly. So poorly.
Brandon made us do, like, if we didn't have the right facial features, if we didn't have the right timing or the right thing,
all movements had to be in sync, and like you had to do the
Mhm.
thing, and it just over and over again. You think like with the strobe light, like, okay, who cares? Nobody's really gonna notice, but they had that extra detail to perfection. Like just they drilled it into us. Like,
Yeah. Oh my God, that is too funny.
yeah.
And I can't believe how long we did it for. I mean, the whole time we were traveling, you would have thought it would have been like, done away with at some point, but they kept doing it. I think even after we all left.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a powerful image. Drama is a powerful image, and whether or not, well, obviously we didn't come up with it, but whether or not we came up with it, it had a powerful message.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they latched onto.
I do remember teachers, like whenever we would show up to schools that we had already been to the previous years, they would want us and expect that drama because it was so impactful to the students then that the next round of students, like they felt like they needed that same exposure. And I mean, to be honest, like I do remember like seeing teenagers my age, like just crying afterwards, like really like, and like for us, we think about how just goofy and cheesy everything is because we did it
every day, multiple
like,
times a day.
If you're like seeing it and like with the full production and the right lighting and right sound, like, yeah, I mean, I could see how that might wake some kids up and have them questioning their decisions or their life. And, so putting it like that, like y'all said earlier, made it worth it. Like all the sacrifices and little things we did when you would see things like that, or go to an elementary school and have the kids laughing at you and like you're like their hero, like you're entertaining them, like you're bringing them such joy. That sort of joy was returned. Like I felt it back. So
Dunham. I know that's a reference. If anybody's not traveled on Straightway, that sound I just made, no one's going to get. But everybody who's been on Straightway knows exactly what that is. There was a drama that we did for the elementary or older elementary students that was about making right decisions and constantly or ignoring your conscience and continuing down a bad path. So,
Yeah.
but it was really funny because it was that was the noise. Everybody knows it, and it was funny. Everybody who did it was
Yeah.
hilarious. So
I think that was some of my favorite doing like the elementary schools, like those little grades, those little kids were just like all about it. They were like just so awesome and fun. They would just laugh at everything. You could barely get up on the stage and like, they were just so awesome.
that like really highlights the face that the rest of the world saw, and that they were like, oh, this is the greatest. Thank you guys so much for doing what you're doing. Teachers would write in. When we're talking about the abuses that went on behind the scenes, when we're talking about the cruelty that went on, that we've all endured, and the things that were going on that the rest of the world didn't see, we have to convince, part of these conversations is to convince people, yeah, what you saw is only the outside perspective that we allowed you to see. What was going on the inside was way more corrupt, way more twisted. The verbal abuse, the psychological abuse, the spiritual abuse, and for many of us, the physical abuse that no one saw. And so if everybody's looking at the fruit of Restoration City's ministry, they're going to look at it and go, no, it's good. It's like, we're all told we're not allowed to tell our stories. So you don't know that there's that other side. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for what you're doing, Sarah, is that you're giving people voices that didn't get to do that ministry, didn't get to try to justify the abuse with the sacrifices and the accolades of being able to spread the kingdom, as they put it. It's an important thing to be able to do, is to be able to tell that story that, yeah, it wasn't all roses and butterflies.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many different aspects and avenues that you can go down in everything. So one thing you were, we discussed a little bit ago, a grant that we got and everything. So throughout the years, they've gotten like different grants or different like things of that nature. And so this happened after we left and everything. They got something with this ministry called Samaritan's Purse. And I believe what they go in and help organizations like redo their facilities. I think it's something along those levels, or give money. So they came in and they were trying to help reduce some of the facility, meaning like dorms, kitchen, things of that nature. And they ended up asking to see the books, I believe, and they would not show them to Samaritan's Purse. So what ended up happening is they ended up pulling out because of this. Now, I will just say, this is kind of all hearsay, but it's stuff that I've heard from several people that were there at the time. And like I said, I mean, none of us were there during this time.
Right.
It was after our time. This happened, it was like a few years ago, right?
After the hurricane, because I think they used the hurricane as an excuse for the damage and used that as
because it was a tragic. Okay, yes, yeah. So
For
yeah,
like 5 years, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so they ended up coming in and everything, but this is according to a lot of people that have left recently, and they had asked to see the books, and of course, they don't show the books, I don't think, to anyone. So there's some weird stuff along with the financial situation of all that. I don't know how they are still going with even just having like the electric on and just all of that stuff on when there's barely, first of all, anybody in the rehab part of it, and that's how you get some of the funds is from the rehab and donors, I guess. But
I think that that's where it's mostly coming from, is that there's no way that they're making their money off of the students. There's not enough students to fund what they need.
No.
They do come off of charity a lot, like a lot of the food comes from charity. But like, I think what you just hit on is that they're getting sponsorship and gifts from ministries that see what's on paper and see the high quality video that they put out a couple years ago.
Mhm.
And they see that and go, oh, this is something that something worth investing in. And you know, they're really good snake oil salesmen. They've been doing it for
Mhm.
nearly 50 years at this point. They know what looks good and what gets people to pull on their heartstring and get them to go, oh, this is something good. That's where I think that's the only way that they could maintain that. Not ministries that have been there, not ministries that have been invested over a long period of time, and none of that. It's people that see it from a distance, see that it looks good, it's a whitewashed tomb, and they're like, oh, this is something beautiful that I can invest in. That's where I think that money is coming from.
Yeah. And
But
so we
that's
would go to,
my opinion.
yeah. So we would also.
I know they have like events like golf tournaments or fundraising events. And you
Oh,
know, there's a couple local businesses in my town that I know donate to them, and I've been questioning whether I want to reach out and let them know what's up. And I don't know, I'm still at a crossroads with that decision, but they do put on fundraising events still.
Mhm.
yeah.
So I mean, there's that, you know.
Do you want to explain again real quick? Didn't y'all do, I don't know, remember what you called it, that you guys had to go out and sell like tickets for like
Oh
a
yeah, it was like a pancake breakfast raffle. And so yeah, you buy a ticket for like $2 and then you show up to the Saturday morning raffle at JR's Richard's pool thing on Highway
Okay.
6, and they're gonna be making pancakes and you get to eat. And so that ticket enters you into a raffle to win a free video iPod. And so we would just be out for hours at the Walmart on Bellway 8, and then we'd be at the Sam's Club on Highway 6 in Sugarland, just all afternoon in the heat, just like having to like approach adults as they're leaving the department store, just like, hey, can I interest you in this? And you know, yeah, mate, they fed us. That was about it. But you know, we were essentially doing all the work. And I believe one person showed up to one stranger actually did show up to the pancake breakfast. But some dude in the program, and I still talk to this guy, he bought a whole bunch of tickets. Like I think he invested like 30-40 bucks. And he was like, okay, well, if I do this, like I gotta win the iPod. Like, and he did win the video iPod.
Oh my
But
God.
they didn't let him use it until he was in reentry phase of the program. So even though he won, that was one thing I remember he was looking forward to. Like, oh, reentry, I get to open my video iPod.
Wow. Yeah, they did TVs when I did a couple raffles, and they did TVs and a couple other things. And we would go through towns and like sell raffle tickets, the little 5-packs, and oh my gosh, yeah, I remember that.
What? So embarrassing. Like what
Yeah.
in the capital F? You know, more embarrassing than that was the freaking, I think I to briefly
Panhandling?
discussed this, was the panhandling. Scotty, did you ever do that with us?
No, I never had to do that.
Oh, West Time.
My
What was that?
God.
Westheimer and
The heat of the fucking day. I'm sorry. No word else could describe it in Houston, Texas. I'm sorry, everyone, for my phrasing, but if you know Houston, Texas, it is so freaking hot, and we would be in the summer. It was right before we would go on our Europe trip that was supposed to be about, you know, speaking and helping people that are poor in Europe. This was not even the case. Anyways, that's one of the ways we were trying to get money. So we would be on the side of Westheimer, us girls, like just us girls, like, and the guys are like honking at us, holding up signs, you know,
God.
like, and then I remember like we would get back in for a break, for like a water break, and then you have to go back out there. You can't get back in here until we have this amount of money. It's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
look at
I never
all
had to do that. I know for like for youth group fundraising, we did like a ton of car washes. It felt like at least twice a month we were doing these car washes in just the heat. And just try, it'd be like in the side of Walmart or in the back of Chick-fil-A. And like some of us, I remember if you wanted a break from washing the cars, you'd have to like hold a sign up and like rile people up. Well, people were just, we were acting so crazy and just entertaining strangers that people were just donating and not getting their car washed. So it kind of made it fun. Like, let's just see how much money we can make being crazy and not washing cars. So I remember I'd be like pantomiming, like just like so stupid. But all that money would help like us go to youth camp or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that money was legit, but because it was like for the youth group.
Camp. But wasn't the youth camp something that we put on?
Okay, yeah. So for the first couple years, yeah, that. And I remember there was one year for that camp. I didn't have the money to raise a couple $100 to raise myself, and I was on the team. So they wanted me to be a camper in the camp. They wanted me to participate and serve in the camp because I was on the Straightway team, but they also wanted me to pay full price, like my parents to pay full price. And so I just was honest, and it was in the middle of a group meeting about this and them calling me out like, so what's the deal? Like, you're not going? Like, and I was like, oh, well, you know, money's, you know, got the money. And so because of that, they would make me and a few other people that didn't even want to be at the camp. They still had us like work and wash dishes or clean and miss out on certain events while everybody else was doing something. So, like, you know, I was fine not going, but yeah, I remember them getting on to me about not wanting to go because it was a money issue, but yet they expected me to still serve and be a camper and pay full price. And they would use those camps to hopefully lure new young people. So we would go and do these shows around the state. And so we would advertise like, hey, we got this youth camp. It's going to be like a whole bunch of trainings and dancing and, you know. And so if you thought we were appealing, you know, you'd come and spend a week with us and do this training. And, you know, of course, like all summer camps, you know, it's going to be fun with just, you know, a bunch of young people like us. But they would use those camps to hopefully recruit people onto the campus or onto the team and live there and be part of the shindig as well. So it was a little bit deceptive, you know.
Oh,
I know there was a few people that did attend those camps that would come and. Yeah.
I remember towards the end of me being there, I think I was a part of that camp once or twice. I was working. God, I was working part-time or full-time outside of the church, but like I still had to come and serve and like do like the Straightway part of it, do the dancing and then do like all the like, you know, and I wasn't getting paid anything. And like, just like you were saying, like you were like having to serve and they still wanted you to pay served.
Yeah.
What in the actual F? But I, you know, so being towards the end of me being there, I'm going to college, have a full like a job, like all this other stuff. But I still had to go and do this. Like it was no question. Like, I swear this place, baby Jesus. So
hey, so you mentioned earlier, like characteristics of a cult, and yeah, you hit like all the target like characteristics and how you can look at other cults and stuff like that. But for me, I kind of wanted to take a different angle and more so like what tactics like cults use to reel people in. So like when I think of my family, like what got us to want to come back? What got us to feel at home and like we could trust these people in this organization? So like there's, like you said, the characteristics of a cult, but I kind of I looked at it from a different angle. And so I wrote a couple down. Thought stopping techniques, either prayer, chants, or meditation. So a lot of that
use of scripture to say, you know, you're not allowed to speak against the Lord's anointed. There was a bunch of scriptures that they would use like that to go, yeah, don't question us. We're the leaders here.
Yeah. And you think of like how long they would be on our knees. Like, would you remember when we would have corporal prayer? They would make us go to corporal prayer during the week and just like pray and just please, like we just for like 2 hours had to be like pouring our hearts out into our prayer. And yeah, a lot of that. I have black and white thinking, good versus evil, us versus them. So I remember even
Mhm.
like a lot of the enemy. Oh, the enemy is attacking, and the enemy will be defeated, and we are under attack. The enemy is accusing us, and like a lot of that sort of speech.
People are cursing us in Wharton, and
Yeah.
we're the us, they're the them. It's just dualistic thinking, and it creates a system that you feel safe within your in group, and everyone else is your enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. And they drilled that into us. Like almost every other sermon was that, like you would hear that sort of language. Okay, so this was a big one, especially like with me and my family. Love bombing, flattery, affection, extra attention. It felt like as soon as my dad started giving them sermons, it was all about vacations and coming out to this dinner and going and getting crawfish and going to the movies and going on this vacation with the whole family and going to a lot of that, like just y'all are our new best friends sort of thing.
Oh, everybody.
And then, like I said,
everybody loved y'all. It was like, yeah, you were like the new kids in town, and it was like
new kids
we're
on the
so
block.
cool. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like the perfect timing too, because it was like as we were running down and people are starting to go, is this place actually legitimate? And then having an actual biblical scholar there gave a lot of legitimacy to what we were doing. So, yeah, there was a lot of favor sent your family's direction, whether it was because they were trying to keep you guys there.
Yeah. It's weird. Like,
that's probably,
I wasn't sure, are they like genuine, or is it like, like, are they actually welcoming? It felt like genuine for the most part, until all of a sudden you're cut off and no one's talking to you anymore. That's obvious. All right. You mentioned this one earlier, Syria, isolation, separation from family and friends, employment, resources, and necessities.
Yep.
So not letting you reach to the outside, not going and visiting family for Thanksgiving, not reconnecting with people from your past once you've gotten sober and clean. Like those were the people that made you that way. You need to focus on this place and what you're doing here and your progress here.
Do you want to explain?
When you look at all those, I mean, they meet, they did them all. Yeah.
Do you want to explain real quick what Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day was like?
So Thanksgiving Day, I remember it was like a big, everybody, they would say prayer and everybody would have supper together or lunch in the gymnasium. And, of course, the family had their head table like Game of Thrones or something. It was so stupid. And they continued to do that.
Yes. And if you got invited to that table, man.
I did a couple times, actually.
What did you say, Scotty?
No, like I remember there was a few times me and my dad did sit at their table, and that sort of cockiness, like it's all stupid.
It was the holy table, the king's table.
But everybody would have Thanksgiving, and then kids go play football games outside. Of course, typical fun stuff. But then in the evening time, they would have a talent show, and they would have. Like the Straightway team, the girls would do a bunch of dances and they'd have the rappers, but they'd get the kids and other people in the program or adults to do like skits. And what y'all did, like turkey trials. What was that with turkey trials again?
Oh my gosh. Turkey trials. It was, okay, so this is part of the control tactics that went into the program. If you write people up, they get demerits throughout the year. And they would keep a record of those demerits. So if you did something wrong, that could be put in a humorous light. That's how you got on turkey trials. Is that like, for instance, one of the ladies actually still there, when she was cooking one year, she used motor oil in the fryer and made French fries with motor oil, and so it gave explosive diarrhea to everyone who ate it. And so that made it to turkey trials. And what they would do is,
wait, did people actually eat this?
Yes.
What?
Yes, that they didn't know. Like it smelled a little funny, but they didn't know. So they ate the French fries, and like everybody just came down with it.
Could you die?
It turns out that
I don't understand. Could you die
Uh,
from that?
I'm sure you could die if you kept eating it, but no, your body just rejects motor oil and you just flush it. So you
What?
just
Dude?
everywhere. So not that we need to go down that route, but that made it into the turkey trials, and they would have somebody as judge, usually David Kurshke, and then they would have a group of peers that would decide the things that you needed to do, whether that was you needed to walk around the entire gymnasium like a turkey and do 10 gobble gobbles. It was so stupid.
In retrospect, it feels like it was like they were airing out everybody's negative attributes and dirty laundry, but with a passive aggressive
Yes.
way of it.
Don't be stupid.
Yeah,
That
like
was practical.
how dumb of them.
Yeah.
So
that was
that's kind of how I can, yeah.
I wonder how much. I mean, we were laughing at the time. I forgot about all that until you were just saying that. We were laughing at the time, but I wonder how many people actually just were felt just so embarrassed and went home crying and because now I'm like, holy crap! I can't believe the shit that they would make them do after these.
Your mom's been on turkey trials more than once. My mom has been on turkey trials more than once. I don't think I've ever heard my mom talk about it, but I would like to hear what she remembers of the turkey trials. Because I remember both of our moms being on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just public humiliation. Don't be stupid. Keep your head down, and everything will be good.
So yeah, we would just have big holiday events were just made even bigger because it was a group of people. So you had your Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas was kind of the same way. But also I just remembered something. Let's just say for Easter was a big day, obviously, but then Mother's Day and Father's Day, they would kind of make a little bit of a big deal as well.
Yep.
And so for instance, for Mother's Day on a Sunday service, they would have they would give certain gifts oh, this has been pretty much, it was a favoritism. I don't know if you remember this at all, but pretty much it was a favoritism happening. Oh, this has been the best mom of the year. And so we give a gift to this person. And this is in church. This is on a Sunday morning, Mother's Day church service, and giving awards to this is the best mom of the year. This is the new mom of the year. This is a mom that,
it was always the in group.
Yeah, it was always, and it was always the same, almost always kind of around the same people. And you guys, I would always feel so bad for my mom. She never okay, so they would also have single mom stuff and just all this stuff, right? And my dad, if you knew, my dad was always in and out. My poor mom was almost like a single mom half the time. I don't know why I'm gonna get emotional right now. This is over the dumbest thing. But so I'd this one year, they're giving all these gifts to all these people, and my mom was one of the only people that didn't receive it. She never did, and my mom worked her butt off and served and did everything they said, kept quiet, which kind of like your mom, Troy. And she got, I think one year she got really emotional and just it was just it was offended, and she got in trouble for it. It was and they would just make these people higher up. Oh, the pastor's wife, the pastor's oldest daughters, just it's the same people getting this recognition over and over again, but they don't ever talk about your mom, my mom, Brenda Slinger, other people who have single people who are working their butts off, who don't have a fault, all this other stuff. And my poor mom, I just to this day, I'm just well, it's just that kind of scenario of that, it's the in crowd. It's it's just
let's praise the in crowd. Let's lift up the in crowd even more.
Yeah. It was to separate the common folk from the in crowd. And it's another control tactic, because most likely the people that are getting those awards, whether it's the father or mother of the year, or somebody that's done anything, it's usually people that were aware of some horrible secret and kept their mouths shut. Whereas
think
people
so?
that just live their lives and were good parents, like my parents were great parents. Your mom was an amazing mother that raised you and Hannah. She was amazing.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've got people like, well, I can't use names. Good
I
gracious.
know, I was gonna say, like,
There was some
the
were
single moms that were there that
incredible.
I can name off that were like these
Yes.
incredible women who like were like, I'm just like, Jesus, like, I mean, they would give some recognition towards that and they would have whatever the best single mom would have, but it was all, why are you doing that? Just give every mom a freaking rose and say Happy Mother's Day. Why doesn't it, you know, like, I don't,
Hierarchy.
huh?
Have to create the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's
That's
like
it. It's like, where are you
I
at
go
in the
to other
pecking order?
churches. I go to other church. I've been to other churches on Father's Day and Mother's Day. I've never seen anything like that. Like, I'm like, what in the actual hell is happening? Maybe there might be like one thing to like the pastor's wife or something, just to giving
Yeah.
special recognition. But
Yeah.
besides that, there's no kind of like every mom gets a rose. Happy Mother's Day. We celebrate the women in our lives, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Oh, it was not like that there. Like and father, like, and like Father's Day too. It's like my dad wasn't there.
Yeah,
Other people didn't have their dads. Like, no.
it was all a competition, like competition based, and it was continuing that idea of the culture of cruelty. That's what it was intended to do, was to express it in those terms. It's like it's always a competition. Are you buying all the BS that we're throwing your direction, and are you turning around and doing that? And we're gonna, if you do that, if you're a zealot for what we say is truth, if you're a zealot for what we say is good and wholesome and whatever they define it as, specifically kind of like the definition earlier, it's on a person. Whatever David says is the good and the righteous and the thing that you're supposed to be doing. If you show some extra effort in covering his many abuses, or you show some effort in towing that line, that's the person, those are the people that would get those recognitions. And it was like, thank you for being loyal to me, and I'm going to give you recognition. But people that just tried to live their lives well, you know, coming from a past of drug abuse, coming from a past of a horrible life, just trying to live your life well, that wasn't good enough. You had to be a crony to get those awards. It's I remember those now, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. It was all types of, like, it was all favoritism, and if any of the Kershke family fit any of the categories that were getting awards, they got those awards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know.
Lordy. So, yeah, I think so. So I think real quick, you know, I kind of maybe wanted to discuss a couple other cults as
Mhm.
well, and just like the scenario as it kind of relates to us and stuff, because like you look at other cults and you're like, well, that's definitely a cult. What's going on there?
Mhm.
I listen to a lot of podcasts myself. I watched documentaries and stuff, and just there's some crazy whacked out stuff out there.
Yes.
But one of the main ones I've looked at is NXIVM. It's NXIVM. When I first heard it, I was like, how the hell do you pronounce this?
Yes.
But
What?
You're not alone.
What? Yeah, it's like,
You're
what
not
the
alone.
hell?
Yeah.
I still have to
The
like
V is a
know when
U.
I
I get it.
pronounce it. But so everyone, if you haven't seen it, watch the documentary on HBO. It's called great, what is it called? It's not called NXIVM, but it's about that. Crap, I can't think of the name of it. Scotty, can you look it up while I'm talking? What is
Yeah.
the name of the
On HBO?
Yeah, it's on HBO. But basically everybody knows it as a sex cult. It is not a sex cult. There is an underneath layer that was a sex part of it.
The Vow?
The vow, yes, thank you. So if anybody has not seen this, watch it. It's amazing. And when I first watched it, I was crying because I was like, I cannot believe how much it relates to the things that we went through, even though it's very it's a different belief system,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
is some different circumstances. Maybe it's still the underlining belief of like power, money, sex, and just like all this stuff. So if
You,
anybody doesn't know anything about them, basically, um, it is an American cult that engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, and racketeering based in California. I mean, not California, based in Clifton Park, New York. And it is a multi-level marketing company that offered personal and professional development seminars through its executive success programs. The company was a recruiting platform for a secret society called DOS, in which women were branded and forced into sexual slavery. So there were, when you first went into this, it was just like a personal growth
mhm,
training kind of program, like how kind of we've explained, you first come in, you're trying to
right.
help better yourself. And that's what people saw, like from the outside looking in. You see all these good things, and then
Personal
like there's like,
development. Yeah.
yeah, and there's these levels. Like there's on the documentary, they kind of show it. There's like the first level of all this stuff. Personal, you receive like you go from like step to step. You receive these sashes, like once you graduate this one course or whatever. And then underneath it all, there was the part that was the sex trafficking part. And so Keith Raniere was the leader of this. And he, how do I explain this? Some people thought he was kind of celibate on some level, but he wasn't. He had women, like he was sleeping around with like, he would get these women, sleep around with him, and then have women for him. Okay, I'm trying to explain this right, but women for him go to other women and saying they would be their DOS or whatever. They would be underneath him, and they would be like, you have to answer to me. You have to text me as soon as I say text me. You have to do all these things. And then when it got to it, when their mind is so effed up and they're in this controlled environment, they finally like they get branded. So they brand like there's
Yeah.
no way else to say this, but kind of close to their vagina.
Yeah.
It's like on their stomach, kind of close to that area. And so they get, but they willingly are doing this, but they're in
Yeah.
a state that is controlled underneath this level of this person. It's like, it's a domino or like a pyramid scheme is
Yeah.
the only way I can explain it. So you have Keith Raniere who's at the top, and then these women, like there was one or two women that were underneath him, and then it just fell underneath there. It kept going and going and going. And so that was like the sex trafficking part of it, because there was also sex along with all that. And so he ended up, they finally, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna look this up real quick. They finally, at the end, do y'all know anything about this at all?
So I learned about it through, okay, so there is this actress named Allison Mack. And so anybody
Yeah.
that grew up
Smallville.
watching Smallville, she
Yeah.
She played Chloe Sullivan.
She was
Yeah.
awesome.
So that's how I learned about that, was she was
Yeah.
involved with NXIVM. And so just I did research because the tag phrase is cult, exposed, conspiracy, sex trafficking. Yeah, I looked that up, and that's how I learned about NXIVM.
Yeah. So in early 2018, NXIVM's founder, Keith Raniere, and his associate, actress Allison Mack, were arrested and indicted on federal charges related to DOS, including sex trafficking. Others associated with NXIVM were also charged with federal crimes. And so he got pretty much, the main person, Keith Raniere, got sentenced to like lifetime in prison. Allison Mack, I think, got sentenced some, but she's going to get out and everything. And like the last thing that I've heard on her is I think that she may have kind of turned on him and accepted the
Yeah, I
fact.
have a little bit of information on her.
Okay.
Alice, yeah, she played the character Chloe Sullivan. She was a member of NXIVM, a cult posing as a multi-level marketing company. In 2018, she was arrested on charges of sex trafficking conspiracy, forced labor conspiracy in relation to NXIVM activities. She pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2021. I got a little snippet from the New York Times. Allison Mack tearfully told a judge on Monday that she first joined the cult-like group known as NXIVM, to find purpose. She was unsatisfied with her acting career, she said, despite her role in the successful television show Smallville. Miss Mack became involved, federal prosecutor said, and she began recruiting other women into the secret sect within NXIVM, in which women were branded with Mr. Rainier's initials and were forced to have sex with him. Her arrest was part of a larger federal case against high-ranking members of NXIVM.
Yeah.
That was New York Times.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. And like so these people, if you watch the Vow, it's about these people that kind of like stood up and like they all left. It's about probably about four main people that got out and left. And two of them have a podcast now that I listen to called A Little Bit Culty. It's so
Nice.
good. Oh my God, it's so freaking good. But they have they've had a few people on from the Vow, but also from like other cults and stuff. So yeah, but they all talk kind of about the same kind of stuff of how like you leave and nobody else talks to you. Nobody else is allowed to talk to you. You had to give a lot of your money. So so all those programs that I was talking about earlier, you first come in and you do all those like trying to better yourself. You give a ton, thousands. One of the main girls, she said, I gave so much money, thousands and thousands of dollars. And like, I kept trying to get up. And to get that next, it was the next sash, like the next sash color.
Gotcha.
She was
You
trying to
paid
get.
for it?
You have to pay for it, giving
geez.
thousands and thousands of dollars. And we all had to like, we were all giving our money for like first fruits. We called it
Yep.
first fruits, and like going towards the pastor's house to make his freaking home when we're all in trailers and barely can freaking eat.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing? So like, yeah, pretty much just like the power and kind of like answering to one person. We all pretty much we had elders and deacons in our church, but it all came to DK. You all have to pretty much everything needs to go past him. The Rainieri guy, he was in total control, like of all like the sex part of everything, but made it seem like everybody was like, he knew what was right, and nobody. He reminds me so much of David Persky. It's insane.
Yeah, I've watched one interview with him with Miss Mac, Allison Mac, is that right?
Allison Mack.
Yeah, Allison.
Yeah.
I saw one interview and I was just like, oh, that is like the same, like his poise, his way of articulating, the way that he talked. And I was like, that's like David Kurshke to the T.
Yeah.
And like, it's all a bunch of word salad. It doesn't really make any sense, but it was like his mannerisms were compelling. You know, we've seen a couple pictures, not that I can show them here, but like a couple pictures of how outgoing and compelling David Kurshke's, at least when he was younger, how compelling he was, a leader, a figure that people would just gravitate towards. And it's like it went to his head, and then you get all this twist.
Do y'all think that it started like that? Like he meant to start this, or he actually had a good heart when it started and really wanted to help people?
Oh,
see, I've heard rumors of like the early, like late 60s, early 70s from like family members of like his first wife's side of the family, and they talked about like how he would, because you know he was very much a product of like the hippie subculture of the late 60s, so he like looked into like mind control and communal living and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm not doubting the drug prevention part, but as far as like the control and like communal living part, I kind of feel like that's what he maybe
was intended,
the long-term goal.
Wow,
that was the end game.
So to add to that, multiple people that I know from his extended family on both sides said that he was much like his father, and that everyone looked at them too as narcissistic for years, as in they would warn family members, stay away from David because of his narcissistic tendencies. I can't even say that. Narcissistic tendencies. So it's interesting that you're saying that if he had looked into communal living and mind control, and that everyone else is talking about, hey, don't get involved with him. He's got some narcissistic tendencies. He's a lot like his father. And his father, being the youth group leader for David Wilkerson, had to be like a zealot for David Wilkerson's high control type stuff. Is that I'm in agreement with you that there's a good chance that whether or not there were things that were good and had good intentions, I truly think that the control side and the elevation of him and his family as the royalty or more holy or more a representation of God. I think that was something that there was some intention from the very beginning. Whether or not that was intended in Teen Challenge, probably not. But his mindset was, this is an avenue to get those goals. So that's funny that I was thinking that when you're saying,
yeah, I was friends with a lot of the other side of the family that came around, and they would talk about stories about his dad knew DK in the late 60s of, the hippie generation, and looking into like programming. And, when you think of the program, you need to go back into the programming. And it's like, it all makes sense when you look at it like that.
The program and the center, it's like all of it is psychological. Even if the place was called Family Life Training Center, that's not how any of us referred to it. We didn't call it that. We called it the center. It was a psychological mapping in our mind that that's the center of the universe. We didn't call it a drug rehabilitation. We called it the program. It was, this is how that's interesting. That I'm thinking about it. It's like, that's all psychological conditioning to believe what you're doing is righteous and what you're doing is appropriate, and it does, and you can justify almost any abuse if people believe it. That's cool.
That's insane. Wow. Wow. I'm just like, holy.
Good insight.
I kind of like, because if anybody knows, like DK did like would always talk about drugs that he did in the 60s and how God set him free and all this stuff. But I always thought, I feel like those drugs affected him way more than everybody else thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh my God. So I think we're almost at, and I cannot believe this. I think we're like at an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. I have an hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll probably end soon. Wow. I'm just like, all this stuff is just kind of.
Yeah.
We only got like
whoa.
halfway through our discussion.
Yeah. We need to pick this up again. We need to
have like part 2. Well,
Yeah.
We'll do this again like in season 2. So we're gonna take a few weeks off, and we're gonna start season 2. We're gonna have other guests on, have different perspectives, and have interesting people on. I must say.
I think this line of thought and this line of questioning, this line of kind of looking at it from how does it compare to other cults? I think this is it's not as like, I really enjoy the stories and the people's stories that you've interviewed, but I think with this type of thought processes of going, all right, if we're trying to explain this place is a cult, comparing it to other cults that people are aware of and that have kind of been broken down already, and that you have all the ideas, I think this is a very helpful way of approaching it. So, and I know that we kind of went over some of the good memories that we had. I mean, yes, turkey trials were embarrassing, and kind of that control, but it was humorous, and
it was like, we slaved on the Straightway team, but you felt a fulfillment and camaraderie with your peers doing that. So
yes. So I think when this one was more along the lines of, there was positive there. Here's some of the humor. Here's some of the things that we remember that were actually positive, and they kind of brought us all together. But it was all of that was used to say, this is why this needs to continue. And any abuse that you witness, any abuse that you have to participate in, any abuse that you hear of via hearsay, you need to brush that aside so that we can continue what we all know is the right thing to do. I mean, I think this is a really good line of thought, and it's a little bit different than your interviews. And I think this is a very insightful, approach, Serious. So I really appreciate this. It's good.
Well, I want to thank you guys for everything. First of all, for even doing your interviews to begin with when you first did them, and then secondly for being on right now and just discussing. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for all your support. Everyone who has supported, texted, emailed, called, just like everything. It means a ton. Especially when you're kind of feel like you're venturing out on something of the unknown. And you're like kind of looking, going, what the hell am I doing? But I know that when it comes down to it, my goal here is to help people their stories and to get them out and to see, like you can get over these humps. I myself, I have been very depressed at times. I still go through depression at times, but having a focus of friends and family, that helps a ton.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, just thank you so much. And everyone just look forward to season 2. We are trying to come up with some more like social media outlet, and that will be coming out shortly as well. So yes, thank you. This is the end of season 1. So thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Good note to end on.
Yeah.
Bye.